No Ugly, yes please. No Ugly is created in New Zealand by a small, determined and innovative team whose mission is to eradicate ugly. It's inherent in the ingredients we choose, the products we create and our business values and behaviours. We are proud to be part of the global wellness movement, making a difference for the wellness of our people and our planet, right here from the cleanest, greenest country at the bottom of the world. No Ugly's range of functional beverages are scientifically formulated to get you back to gorgeous. With natural ingredients, they've created a truly functional range of beverages with proven health claims. And unlike any other health drinks, their entire line is low sugar but taste amazeballs. Get back to gorgeous with No Ugly skin and 10 grams of marine collagen. Detox, the hangover dream. Hydrate like an isotonic rain in the desert. Libido, yes, yes, yes. Immunity, it's to live for. Sleep, sweet dreams. Focus, your personal laser. Gut, for shits and giggles. And now calm, it's like a cuddle from your mum. They have 3 different formats, 250ml glass bottles, 3 30ml cans, and now 100ml glass shots. No Ugly? Yes, please. This is the I Quit Sugar podcast, unprocessed, brought to you by No Ugly Wellness Tonics. Hi, I'm JJ from I Quit Sugar.
And I'm Peter, founder of Goodness Me, which is your go-to good-for-you grocery store. We're here out of a deep desire to help you live your healthiest life. We've both been through health journeys which have been transformative in how we live our lives and approach each day. After learning how to manage my autoimmune condition through food and lifestyle, I realised that we live in a world where we are overfed and undernourished. But it can be as easy as some simple changes that can have a huge impact on how your body operates and how you feel day to day.
I've also been through a very confusing and oftentimes overwhelming health journey, which started with gut dysbiosis and developed into thyroid issues and now an autoimmune condition that I'm still learning about. We don't want you guys to go through what we have. It can be a lonely, overwhelming and often conflicting and confusing world. So we're hoping that these conversations inspire you to dig a bit deeper, cut through the noise and help you live a healthier life. Health is wealth at the end of the day. So I Quit Sugar are bringing you an 8-episode series where we interview some incredible people who have so much wisdom to share on different areas of health and well-being. It's our hope these conversations inspire you to take control of your health and live your fullest life in the process.
Our guest today is Asha Evertsz, the OG expert, clear skin goddess, nutritional genius. We think she might have magic powers. Asha pioneered the inside-out, outside-in approach to skin after going through her own acne and pigmentation experience. She wanted to create an evidence-based demystifying solution for beauties that don't want to rely on band-aid fixes like the pill or accutane. And guess what? She did it and more. Through her clinic, The Clear Skin Experts in Melbourne, Asha and her team are passionate about taking the shame and stigma out of acne and healing for happiness. She changes lives and gives people their confidence back. We told you, magic powers. She even has a cat named Lola. All she needs is a flying broom. Asha, thanks so much for joining us. We're so excited to get stuck in.
Yeah, so when it comes to, the ideal food for a day, I think that, I've been talking a lot about balancing blood sugar levels, which is good for, everything. It's good for hormones, it's good for gut, it's good for stress, it's good for skin. Um, and when we look at this, we want to make it as easy as possible because I hate food stress. So I find that looking at it as a formula is really, really helpful. And so if we look at, a day on a plate, then we can look at a plate being a formula. And so I've talked about protein before and how much of a fan I am. It's, the number one anti-aging macronutrient. We build keratin in our skin from protein. We build collagen from the amino acids in protein. Protein is very repairing for the skin, and protein is very stabilizing for blood sugar levels. And another thing is that protein is a really nutrient-dense macronutrient. So when we're looking at things that we want for skin, for example, zinc, B12, it's got those in abundance. So I love protein. So, what is the food formula? Well, basically, it's being protein forward. So, picking your protein first, picking a piece of protein that's the size and thickness of the palm of your hand. That's going to give you the optimal amount, which is generally 25 to 30 grams. If you do that over each main meal in a day, you're getting 90 to 100 grams. I find that most women are under eating protein. So, that's one of the things that can really transform your skin and your energy. And the next thing would be we want a rainbow on a plate. So we want 2 cups worth of above ground vegetables. So these are the non-starchy vegetables. And I'll get to the starches because women in particular do actually need carbs. And I'm not a fan of a low carb approach. We've just got to be a bit educated about our carbs. So 2 cups of above ground veggies, and that's a range of leafy green vegetables and your zucchinis and capsicums and herbs and all of that, having a really good, and that's going to be so good for your gut as well, that fiber. 1 to 3 tablespoons of good fats. Don't be afraid of fat. Fat is your friend. Skin is built from protein and fat. Our hormones are built from fat. Our brain is built from fat. And so we're wanting to choose, coconut fats or olive oils or olives, oily fish, those kind of fats to add to the meal. That helps to help us feel full as well. And then you'd add in 1/2 cup of starchy carbs or carbohydrates. And as I mentioned, for women to ovulate, for women to have good progesterone, for women to have good sleep, we do need to have carbs. And so that would round off your plate. And then you get extra bonus points if you can add in things like fermented foods like sauerkraut and kimchi and spices. So spices are a super skin food. They're loaded with antioxidants. And we've talked about cinnamon, but things like turmeric are absolutely fantastic for the skin as well. So food can be a formula and it can be quite straightforward. Definitely eating for skin is not about green smoothies and fasting and things like that. There is a place for those things, but not in most women's busy lives on a day-to-day basis.
Yep. And I love how you've described everything. It makes it feel much more achievable. And the stress of counting calories or macronutrients,
weighing things.
I know I've been through that back in the day, and I couldn't think of anything more stressful. And you almost find this food freedom when you eat like this, in my experience personally, and also from our Goodness Me community. I'm sure the I Quit Sugar community as well. You hear that. So I love how you've explained that. You mentioned how a lot of women don't eat enough protein, and I'm really curious why you think that often happens.
Yeah, sure. Honestly, after seeing thousands of women in clinical practice, my observation overall is that most women aren't even eating enough, full stop. So one of the first things that we do is actually to increase the amount of food. Generally, I find that women are under eating, and then I think that with breakfast, there's just a lot of confusion, and there's a lot of confusion about breakfast. And I think that if we're starting the day being protein forward, then that can actually be so transformative. And then it kind of normalizes. People are very confused. Should I be eating animal protein? Should I be more plant-based? People are very, very confused about that when they come to see me. And so giving them the guidelines and talking about how helpful protein is. And then when women start to eat more protein and see how much of a difference it makes in terms of skin and mood and energy and satiation, because protein is one of the most satiating macronutrients, then they're sold. It's almost like you need to give people permission to eat more protein and fat.
Yeah, that's it. I also feel sometimes as women, we're juggling so much. It's easier to chuck a piece of toast in the morning and run out the door, or, you're doing a million things. So,
and that's so understandable because everyone's so busy. And what I'm all about is making things really quite straightforward. So one of the examples I was going to give about a breakfast that's protein forward that also has fat and fiber is so easy. It's 2 boiled eggs, an apple, and 2 tablespoons of almond butter. That's what I have when I'm in a rush. I don't spend, I've got a business. I don't spend a lot of time in the kitchen on a, day-to-day basis, but it's just being mindful of your macronutrients, really.
Yeah, I love boiled eggs for breakfast, and my son has just discovered the joy of some pepper on boiled eggs in the morning. I'm like, wow, I can't believe he likes it, but yeah, eggs are a big favorite in our household.
So let's talk about eczema. I know this is something I've had issues with since I was little, and I know both the I Quit Sugar community, Goodness Me community, this is a consistent problem and real pain point for people. What would you recommend in this area?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a really big area, and it can be very challenging and painful, especially when you have bodily eczema, or I see a lot of people who have facial eczema, which is really challenging because not only do you have the appearance factor, but it's a very uncomfortable skin condition when you're looking that itch that comes through at nighttime that can be, really disruptive to sleep and really distressing. So let's talk about eczema as the beautiful, complex skin condition that it is. There are 8 different types of eczema. So I think the first thing that is really important to do is to have it properly diagnosed as to which eczema you're dealing with. And we know that inflammation that impacts the skin often doesn't start in the skin. It's like when the red light comes on in your car, the red light's not the problem, it's the engine. Yeah. So I think we need to recognize that eczema is definitely one of those conditions that needs to be looked at from the inside out as well.
Yeah.
When we have inflammation from the gut, it communicates with other systems. Like, there are no borders in the body. There's no customs or passport control. Like, everything feeds into everything else. And so the gut can very much communicate with other systems like the skin when it is out of balance. And in particular, the pathway that we see show up in the skin when the gut is triggered is something called cytokines. That's what's specifically happening. Imbalances in the gut, we know, can be caused by antibiotics, stomach bugs, high starch and sugar diets, stress, and other factors. And I do find that eczema in particular is hugely triggered by stress. And we know that a recipe for a skin condition is stress, which kicks off the inflammatory cascade in the body, combined with a poor skin barrier or a leaky skin barrier. And in eczema, we generally have both. So when we're looking at eczema, a lot of people, when we're looking at the genetic component of eczema, we're looking at something called a filaggrin gene deficiency. And essentially what that means is that a lot of people with eczema, they have half of the filaggrin protein in their skin than they should have. And filaggrin is essential for building a healthy skin barrier. And this is genetic, it's passed on through a parent. So if you have eczema and you have a parent who has eczema, it's really likely that you have a filaggrin gene deficiency, which is just setting you up to have a poor skin barrier. So if you had this gene deficiency and then you had some gut issues, it's almost guaranteed that you're going to develop eczema or have a flare of eczema. And that is putting it in a very simplistic way, because we know that there are around 16 different triggers for eczema. So we've got 8 different types of eczema, 16 different triggers for eczema. And at any one point, someone having a flare is going to be having about 5 of those triggers interplaying together. And this is why it makes it so challenging to treat eczema. And so essentially, yes, the gut is usually heavily involved, but we can, and I've mentioned stress, but we can also be looking at hormonal imbalances, environmental issues, because if you've got a issue with the filigrein gene deficiency, you're actually more likely to develop allergies. And also, specifically, you're more likely to have allergies to cats. If you grow up in a home where there's dogs when you're younger, that's actually going to strengthen your immune system if you have eczema. So that's really interesting. But yeah, we're looking at a number of different factors. So there can be environmental factors, poor detoxification, nutritional deficiencies, mitochondrial dysfunction, heavy metal toxicity, autoimmune conditions. And so we really need an individual approach based on finding out what your exact triggers are and then rectifying those. So generally speaking, the first 4 things that I would look at if we were addressing eczema would be, does this person have a leaky gut? Is a genetic factor involved? So does a parent have eczema as well? And is there a likelihood of the filigrein gene deficiency? Are there food allergies or sensitivities? And is there an underlying gut pathogen or infection like Candida? So those would be the first 4 things that I would be assessing. And then obviously the stress is a really big one too. We do need to be careful about, food in eczema, but unfortunately it's not as simple as cutting out gluten, cutting out sugar. Those are going to help in the short term, but we really need to look at those causative driving factors. And it's the same as supplements. We know there are some supplements that are very beneficial, like omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin D, probiotics, St. Mary's thistle for the itch, but we really need to find out what those causative driving factors are, and that may involve seeing a functional nutritionist or naturopath to get some stool testing, see if there is a gut overgrowth, see if there is candida, maybe do a hydrogen breath test, see if there's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, see if there's small intestinal fungal overgrowth. You can, definitely do things around the house to minimize the flare-ups, and not taking hot showers is a good tip. Staying away from products that have fragrances and emulsifiers and sodium lauryl sulfate and things like that. And also what people need to know is that even if you're in remission with your eczema, because of the barrier issue, you really need to be working on the barrier the whole time. So most of the clients that we work with, we're recommending that they're using home LED devices, because that can be really, really beneficial, not only for the flare-ups, but also in between. And then, just it is a bit of a road to find out your triggers, but once you know your triggers, then they can be resolved, and that's the best way. I did want to actually touch on topical steroids, because I am very passionate about this, and I've seen some absolute horror stories. So topical steroid withdrawal syndrome is not something that's very well known, but it's a very debilitating condition that can arise from the use of topical steroids to treat eczema sort of over the long term. And so what happens is you are prescribed topical steroids for your eczema. You use those topical steroids, and then you think, okay, well, my eczema's not flaring, so I'm going to stop using the topical steroids. And then what happens is, after a few days of stopping the topical steroids, your skin can become red, itchy, burning, and really mimic a flare-up of eczema, but it's not eczema, it's topical steroid withdrawal syndrome. And so that leads to a cycle where people will go back onto the topical steroid because they think they're having an eczema flare. And then this can go on for years. And so ultimately, when those people do decide to come off the topical steroids, it really depending on how long. I mean, I've seen people, the worst case I've seen was someone who was put on topical steroids at 2 years old and came to see me at 23 and was still using them.
I actually was prescribed those from a young kid age 5, I think, and used them probably into my early 20s as well because of exactly what you're describing. And interestingly enough, my mum has eczema as well. So I'd never heard the skin barrier thing. So, but it's a lot more complex than just saying try this or try that. You've got to find out all those triggers and look into things with the right health expert as well.
Absolutely. And just one more thing about topical steroid withdrawal. If you have been using it for more than 3 months, because that's the upper limit of how long you should be using it, you really need to get help in withdrawing because you can't come off them cold turkey. It's a process of slowly withdrawing, and you need a lot of internal support through that time as well. You can head over to the ITSAN website, which is Topical Steroid Withdrawal Syndrome Support, and they give the most comprehensive information and support on topical steroid withdrawal that I've seen, but it can be quite a tough and long road for that topical steroid withdrawal.
I've also heard of bleach baths for
Yeah.
eczema, and I assume you wouldn't recommend those. I was a bit horrified when I heard about them because I had a daughter who had a few issues and was allergic to a few things when she was a baby. And, you go down all these rabbit holes, and I remember seeing all these mums on forums talking about bleach baths. But I guess, when you've got a child that's in pain and suffering, you will literally do
Of course.
anything, right?
Of course. And people do, they get desperate because it can be really, like if you don't have sleep because you're itching all night, you're going to try anything.
Yeah.
If we're looking at one of the genetic causative factors being that filaggrin gene deficiency that's affecting the skin barrier, then having a bleach bath is going to be quite catastrophic to that skin barrier. So that's my concern around that. So yeah, it's definitely not something that I would be advocating, but I do understand that quite a lot of people are recommending that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess also with the skin barrier thing, so what you are saying is, address the root cause, but I assume it's all about moisturizing and trying to strengthen externally as well.
Yeah, so basically, with repairing the skin barrier, it's going to be making sure that we've got the building blocks that the skin needs to have a healthy skin barrier, and also not using anything on there that's going to disrupt the skin barrier. And so many over-the-counter products have got things like emulsifiers in them, which are going to disrupt the microbiome and the skin barrier. And so it's being very particular about what you are using topically so that you can repair that skin barrier and microbiome, because let's not forget that the skin has the second largest microbiome of the body next to the gut, and that all resides in the skin barrier. And so we want to be really careful. We want to be making sure that we're using lots of essential fatty acids. So there are ranges where you can use topical essential fatty acids to really be strengthening the skin membrane and the ceramides in the skin and things like that. And actually, there are even ingredients like EGCG, that's a derivative of green tea polyphenols, that can actually help rebuild filaggrin and help filaggrin. So I think it's about seeing someone who really knows their skin physiology and their cosmetic chemistry and being able to help from that aspect. But the most part of it is not using topical products that are going to strip the skin barrier in the first place.
Yeah. So, Asha, we wanted to talk to you about premature aging and what people can do to reduce this, how sugar intake comes into play with this, and obviously, affect our skin.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of my favorite topics at the moment. So the skin can reflect the level of inflammation in the body. It can reflect poor gut health, stress levels, food allergies, and it's a very motivating organ. I think we'd all agree that we want to age well and we want to look good, and so it's very, very motivating. And all age is related to inflammation. So what's happening on the inside will be expressed on the outside. And so we know that sugar drives inflammation, and we know that inflammation drives premature aging and even drives something called inflammaging, which is premature aging specifically through inflammation. We know that with sugar, there's a very real thing called glycation. So when you have a lot of sugar, it's going to have these proteins that are attached to the proteins and fat in your body, and it's a bit like rusting it from the inside out. So glycation is almost like when you get a blowtorch on a creme brulee, and then you get that crispy, crackly, hard brown crust. That's essentially what sugar does to cause glycation, to cause, irreversible damage to the skin that will show up in the skin as wrinkles and sagging and all of those things that we associate with aging. So there's definitely that aspect. Your chronological age, so I'm 45, can be different to your cellular age. All right, we know this through advanced testing that we have access to now. So you can be 45, but your cellular age might be 60.
Right.
Or if you're having, a very low inflammatory diet and you're taking care of your stress and you're having lots of sleep, then, who knows, your cellular age could be 35. So these things are, we're able to tinker with them, which is really cool. And apart from the irreversible things like glycation, the rest can actually happen in quite a short amount of time. So, you've got your three kind of top aging accelerators, like sugar. And I've talked about the effect, it has on glycation and it has on destruction of collagen and elastin. And then we've got, your vegetable oils, which kind of cause bushfires within the body, and then that causes free radicals, and that causes inflammation, and that causes aging through cross-linking and weakening the skin system. And then you've got alcohol, which we are all fairly familiar with being sort of pro-aging, in the fact that it definitely makes us more puffy, causes inflammation, puts that stress on the gut and liver. So those would be probably my top three, aging accelerating ingredients. But if you like, I have a few sort of amazing anti-aging lifestyle, quite easy lifestyle factors that you can include every day. Would you like to know what they are?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Great. Okay. So obviously we've talked about, you are what you eat, and, our metabolic or glucose will dictate the rate that we're aging. And we know that as we age, we need more nutrients. And so we're wanting things like vitamin A, vitamin C, zinc, biotin, CoQ10. Probably the top two things that I would encourage people to have on a daily basis if they are wanting to be pro-aging would be investing in a really good quality omega-3 supplement, so a fish supplement, or eating oily fish 4 to 5 times a week, because we know that that's going to directly affect the inflammation effects on the skin cell membrane. And then the other one might surprise you. So I'm a big fan of beef liver. I like powdered beef liver. I don't eat actual beef liver, but it is the most nutrient dense food on the planet, and it is a hugely anti-aging food. So it's one of the most concentrated sources of vitamin A, and we know that we need lots of vitamin A to have really healthy skin and healthy skin DNA, and it's really anti-aging ingredient. It also contains B12, which is an anti-aging ingredient, and K2, which helps with calcium absorption. And we know that can be an issue as we age. But what you might not know is that calcium is actually a really important nutrient for the formation of healthy skin cells. And it's rich in CoQ10, which is a mitochondrial anti-aging nutrient. So I'm a big fan of beef liver capsules, organic beef liver capsules, or using powdered organic beef liver in food. It's so interesting because you mentioned that, you had someone on who was talking about cold therapies. But definitely hot and cold therapy is one of the most amazing things you can do for anti-aging. We know that sauna activates the immune system and creates heat shock proteins that help repair the aging related damage to the skin. It helps detoxify, it's anti-inflammatory, it lowers cortisol. We know that high cortisol thins skin. And then alternating it with cold is a powerful nervous system reset and brings blood flow and circulation to the skin, which is always really, really important. And you can do these things at home, like people have ice baths at home. If you're really brave, you can have a cold shower like I do at home. Movement and exercise is the number one anti-aging thing that you can do, and it addresses all of the hallmarks of aging, so it's really important. And then sleep is my other favorite one, because we actually produce, our skin repairs when we sleep, but we produce growth hormone, which is reparative, and it does decline as we age. But the interesting thing about growth hormone is that it peaks in the first 90 minutes of sleep. So even if we go to sleep 1 or 2 hours late, we're not getting the peak of growth hormone that night. So it's really important, if you want to age well, please be in bed by 10 p.m.
I love that. What if your child wakes you up an hour and a half in every night?
Children are very bad for aging.
It's not in our heads.
Asha, I've got to tell you that beef liver has been taking off on our shop, on goodness me. And I thought, what is going on? And I think it's like the new collagen that's coming.
It's so the new collagen. I'm just obsessed. Yeah, I'm absolutely obsessed with it.
Yeah. I feel like a few different people are talking about it. Like you've got functional dentists as well. And people from all angles.
Really interesting. And so that cell test as well that you mentioned, where do
Yeah.
you get that done, or how does that work?
There are a few different tests. So, as naturopaths, nutritionists, we have access to functional pathology testing, which is very different to the testing you can get done through Medicare. And the labs are often in the States, so it's often a case of getting a kit. But look, I'm sure that people can order them themselves. So let me have a look into, because I'm used to working with labs where I order testing for my patients. But let me have a look and see what testing people can order directly themselves. Like I think there's one called True Age.
Okay.
And then you can do that, and you can see, like we were talking about, your chronological age versus your cellular age, which is really cool and very motivating.
Your body's actually chocker with natural collagen when you're born. That's why everyone looks amazing when they're young and secondhand when they're old. Sure, collagen's important for your muscles and bones and tendons and ligaments, but let's face it, your skin, hair and nails are the shop front. To get the most out of No Ugly Skin, it's best to treat it like part of your daily skincare routine. Taking one per day will have you radiating natural $1,000,000 gorgeousness. Enjoy it in a moment's peace at any time of the day, or throw it in your handbag as you're running out the door. It couldn't be easier. So what's in No Ugly Skin? Collagen, obviously. 10,000 milligrams of gorgeous, ethically sourced French marine collagen, which scientifically increases skin elasticity and firmness when consumed daily for at least 4 weeks. Combining this with No Ugly's hero ingredient, enzogenol, New Zealand's very own super antioxidant, and with support from vitamin C, No Ugly Skin helps your body keep up production of its own natural collagen. So basically, it's a buy one, get some free deal. All ingredients certified 0% ugly.
So pigmentation, is that a hormonal issue for pigmentation? I know JJ was talking to me a bit about that.
Something that has crept up on me in the past couple of years that I haven't really dealt with before. And I thought, what is this? And it's very frustrating.
It is. It's very sneaky because, it's one of those things where it's like we're looking at the skin as an iceberg, and what we see is the top 10%, and what we can't see is the 90% below. We can, if you have a skin diagnostic camera like we do. But, so what you don't know is that pigment was probably forming for years and years before you could see it with the naked eye. And that's the thing about pigment, is that it does sneak up on us. By the time we see it, it's so entrenched in the skin. But let me cover a few points on that. And it's also very dear to my heart, because my pigment story was, years ago, I went on the pill for my acne, and I didn't realize that a side effect of the pill was melasma. And so I got terrible melasma, which is that brown splotchy pigment that you can often get on your forehead or underneath your eyes. People can get that from being pregnant as well. And so that's when we're saying, yes, pigment is a hormonal issue. But really, pigment is a very complex and temperamental pathway. There are 120 genes involved in the pigment cascade, so there's a lot of room for error in that cascade. But really, there are three main causes for pigment, and there's a few different types of pigment as well. So there's pigment that can be caused by exposure to the sun and UV, and caused by exposure to UV through the eyes, because it's directly going to the brain and telling us we need to produce. So that's why polarized sunglasses are so important if you have pigmentation. There's hormonal pigment, which I'll go into in a moment. And then there's pigment caused by injury or trauma or heat. Like, if you get a burn and then you've got pigmentation after that, or if you've had an acne breakout, maybe you've picked it, and then you've got post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation left behind after that. So basically, melanin is a substance that produces hair, eye, and skin pigment. And really, it's there to help us. It's our friend. It protects us from UV light. And it's like when you get that exposure to the UV, what pigment is, it's basically like a little mini umbrella being popped up over your skin to protect the DNA in your skin. So that's what happens, and it just gets left behind. With hormonal pigment, it's all down to estrogen. So high levels of estrogen can increase melanin production. And that's why things like hormonal medication, like the pill, pregnancy, are a very real risk factor for pigmentation. And in fact, 25% of women who are on the pill will develop melasma as a side effect of being on the pill, which I, for one, wasn't told about when I went onto the pill. So in saying that, what can you do? And like most skin issues, prevention is better than cure. But one of the biggest things that we can do is be religious about our SPF use. So once that pigment is there, it's like a magnet for UV. So we really need to protect it from getting further entrenched and from getting worse and from developing in the first place. If you're a picker, you need to stop picking, because it's pretty much guaranteed that you'll get some pigmentation. Taking a good quality omega-3 will really help with having healthy melanocytes, which is the cells that produce melanin. If it's hormonal, then you need to address the cause of the high estrogen. So it's quite challenging to fix pigmentation if someone is still on that hormonal medication that's driving the issue. But if you need help with clearing that after you stop taking it, or, perhaps you have estrogen dominance, which is very common in women, then you can work with, a clinical naturopath or nutritionist to clear that. Topical ingredients work very, very well. So things like niacinamide, vitamin A, vitamin C, glutathione, and repairing the skin barrier. Drinking licorice tea can be helpful as well. Wearing a hat and wearing polarized sunglasses. We need to understand that in Australia, the UV is 20 times stronger than in the Northern Hemisphere. And so most of us genetically are from the Northern Hemisphere. If you ask people where their grandparents are from, they're saying they're from England, Ireland, Scotland. And so the UV here compared to there is 20 times stronger. So we need to be very, very diligent about using SPF on our face. Following an anti-inflammatory diet will help, and then using some LED is very helpful too. And those are the kind of things that I suggest or we actually do in clinic before progressing to those treatments like skin needling and laser and Cosmelan, because we need to address the cause and not just the little bundle of pigment that we can see.
Yeah, I was about to ask about skin needling actually, and I've heard about Cosmelan lately. So if you go down that path with pigmentation, do you think it's likely to come back if you don't address those underlying causes? Yeah.
I do. Yeah, that's the nature of pigment because, often it's entrenched in the dermal epidermal junction. And so we can always sort of manipulate how visible it is, but we can't change what is entrenched in the dermal epidermal junction. So that's why we really need to be diligent in the summer months, especially if we've been working on our pigment, to make sure that we're still using all of those interventions, and particularly SPF. And honestly, SPF is not enough in summer. We all need to be using topical antioxidants as well as SPF.
Where do you find the topical antioxidants? Are that in creams or specific brands?
Yeah, so I mean, I know the brands that I work with in my practice. So I work with Dermavigils and I work with Osmosis, and so we use ingredients in there. So, there's a big difference between professionally prescribed skincare based on a skin diagnostic imagery, where we can see the level of pigmentation that's underlying, and we can understand what ingredients we need to be using on that and what other modalities that we need to be using on that. But I can say, through my own experience treating melasma, that was really quite significant, that it is very possible, and it takes a little while, but it's very possible to treat quite severe pigmentation without laser and without peels.
Asha, would love to get your take as well on antibiotics, because I know you mentioned it in the beginning when you were talking about how they disrupt the gut. And I've personally, and I think a lot of people have gone through experience where you go to the dermatologist for an issue and they prescribe you an antibiotic. And this happened to me a couple months ago. I was so desperate because I'd been having issues with something which I thought started from a face mask. And so when I started researching about that antibiotic, the side effects looked horrendous. I didn't even want to touch it, and I hadn't touched antibiotics for 10 years for my autoimmune condition because I felt like that exacerbated or kicked off my symptoms or whatever, chicken and the egg, hard to tell. But what's your take on antibiotics? Because I feel like it's often the go-to for many doctors.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, they have their toolkit, and that's what they're familiar with using. And what I often see, so if anyone's had complete resolution of their skin condition from antibiotics, they're probably not going to land on my doorstep, okay, because they've still got pre-existing concerns. And so I don't generally tend to see anyone who's had complete resolution of their skin condition through antibiotics. What I do see is that, and it really concerns me, the long-term use of antibiotics, because we know that just one round, like 2 weeks of antibiotics, can have a lifelong impact on the gut. So, and we know the gut is so important for skin health. Okay, so it sometimes seems really counterproductive to be using antibiotics, and we really need to be repairing the gut and the microbiome. So what I tend to see is that it can really reduce the symptoms whilst the person is taking it, but when they come off, they just kind of rebound or go back to where they were. And there can be two reasons for that. So an antibiotic can work as an anti-inflammatory whilst you're taking it, and so it can have that anti-inflammatory effect. From my perspective, there are much more effective anti-inflammatory natural ingredients that we can use. And the other reason that it can improve a skin condition whilst you're using it, and then, it's not effective when you stop using it, is because potentially that skin condition is being driven by a gut overgrowth.
Right.
So there are some times that we will actually recommend that people need to take antibiotics, and I never say that lightly. And in those cases, it would be if we've actually confirmed. So say you've got eczema, And your skin barrier is so impaired to the point of cracking and bleeding. And there's a lot of heat and a lot of redness. It's quite likely that there's been a staph bacterial overgrowth develop because the barrier is so impaired. And we can ask the GPs to test for that. And so if someone's got a raging staph infection, you better believe that I'm going to be on board with them using topical, if not also internal antibiotics to resolve that staph overgrowth as well. It really does depend on the level of the overgrowth because developing antibiotic resistance to staph is a very real thing. And so we don't want to be going ham on the antibiotics for things like that. But if you have a staph overgrowth, it's really it can be problematic and quite dangerous. So we would definitely be looking at using, working with a GP to use antibiotics in that case. Same thing for things like cellulitis. I do believe there's a case for using antibiotics. We work with someone who does quite comprehensive gut testing, and quite a few of our clients will show up as having bacterial overgrowths. And depending on what comes up, sometimes antibiotics are needed. And then she goes in and she does, gut repair and reinoculation after that. So there's definitely a place for them. I just am not that person who loves people being put on doxycycline for 3 to 6 months or longer for their acne without having tried, to look at the other like interventions that don't have side effects first.
Yes, that's it. And when you read up about the side effects of doxycycline, I mean, gosh, that scared me enough to not even look at it. But I suppose
Yeah.
the gut's so powerful as well. I think it's so important. Personally, your practitioner understands gut health and everything you've been, about as well. It's really critical.
Absolutely. And we really need to respect health autonomy. So when we're working with people, we need to respect that they will make decisions for themselves based on their mental health as well as their physical health. And so what I've learnt is that my role is to educate, but it's also to support and hold a place of non-judgment. So my place is to support that person's health autonomy and for them to make decisions about what they feel at the time is going to be best for their mental health as well as their skin health.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's important for us to reiterate we're absolutely not judging anyone who goes down conventional methods, particularly when it comes to the skin. It just seems like, that's the first port of call. And I'm really excited that we're talking to you and, bringing this message to more people to show them that there are other ways to address things if they should choose to do that. But
Yeah, absolutely. And those things, from my perspective, are a last resort or indicated because we have actually, definitively found an overgrowth that requires eradication through that way. But from my perspective, they're a last resort because I've seen so many success stories when we've used things that don't have side effects.
And speaking of things that do have side effects, and I know this is, something that you come from personally as well, is your acne story. I also suffered from acne as a teenager, and, my parents were very hesitant to put me on any form of birth control or Roaccutane, but I guess, I was in a stressful environment. Looking back, I probably didn't realize that I had some food sensitivities, a perfect storm. And I was on Roaccutane because I just wanted clear skin, right? And I didn't know any other options. But can you talk us a bit more about acne and what you see and how you go about treating it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And my favorite thing to treat, and probably my highest success rate, is with acne. I just absolutely love it. And whether that's because I resolved my own and then I was just so passionate about helping other people. But yeah, I absolutely love it. And I love the lives that we change through this work as well. It's a real privilege. So There is quite a difference between teen acne and adult acne. Teen acne can be quite a lot easier to resolve because there's been less interventions. They're not sort of winding up in our rooms after being on the pill for 10 years, and we've got the compounding effects on the gut and liver and nutritional deficiencies to deal with as well. But if I could simplify, I would say that it's first and foremost, we're looking at the foundational things. And the biggest thing in acne is the blood sugar balancing. So when you've got imbalanced blood sugar, then you're really setting off a cascade of things like testosterone and DHT that will create the acne. So if we can balance blood sugar levels, then we actually end up balancing the hormones that are causing the acne. Now, it's not, acne always gets clumped in with hormonal, and it's definitely not always the case. It's, gut, it's inflammation, it's stress, it's food intolerances, like you mentioned. However, using the foundationals is extremely powerful. So looking at an anti-inflammatory diet that's stabilizing blood sugar levels and going back to the food formula, that works extremely well. And for a period of 3 months, eradicating inflammatory foods like your refined dairy, sugars, vegetable oils like canola, alcohol, gluten. Okay, so 3 months, we ask that 95%, they're reduced by 95%, and then we're looking at that food formula that I was talking about before, using the protein, etc. Looking at sleep. So sleep is extremely important for healing all skin conditions, but for acne, so looking at how much sleep someone is getting, and then those other things we touched on, like coffee, because coffee on an empty stomach not only will drive stress hormones, but as soon as you engage cortisol, you are also engaging insulin, because they're like a married couple. And so we're wanting to really reduce the impact of cortisol and insulin through the diet and through lifestyle. So those are the foundational aspects, is taking out those inflammatory foods, making sure women are eating enough and eating often enough for their blood sugar levels, following the food formula, cutting out things that are going to drive hormonal imbalance, like coffee on an empty stomach, alcohol on an empty stomach, reducing stress, increasing sleep. And then, using some really amazing topicals so that we're able to heal from the outside in. So I always say that it's 70% internally driven, 30% externally driven. So I find that working from both aspects are really important. And there are some aspects of skin that I can't fix with diet. So I can't fix indented scarring with diet. I can definitely increase all the nutritional cofactors to make sure that there's minimal further scarring. But if you have indented scarring, if you have pigmentation, then we need to use topicals, and we need to use topical external modalities to correct that as well. So I find that using both works really, really well. I don't use a lot of supplements, so I'm really big on using diet, lifestyle, and using skincare as a supplement from the outside in. And if we don't have success with that in 3 months, then it's time for some testing.
Asha, I think that's really refreshing as well to hear that there is another option or route or alternative, because I imagine, I don't know about your experience, JJ, but if there was only kind of one option thrown your way.
Yeah, I think I started off with some supplements that didn't really do anything, and then went on to the medication. They were the options.
And because why? Because supplements can't replace sleep, and supplements can't replace macronutrients. And, if you're extremely stressed, then supplements aren't going to really touch the sides. So what is most powerful is like the foundational things, what we do every single day, what we have control over doing in our daily life. Because I'm like a personal trainer, I can only show you what to do, and it's really up to you to do it every day. But it's those things, it's following a circadian rhythm, with your day and your night routines that I do quite a lot with my clients as well. And there is definitely a place for supplements, but I only believe in using supplements after you've done testing so that you know very accurately what that person needs. And, supplements can be quite expensive. So wanting to make sure that they're individualized and we're not just, broadly kind of saying, oh, you need this and then this. Does everybody need fish oil? Yes. Does everyone with acne need beef liver? Yes. But that's about the extent of the supplementation that I will do. But I am very, very motivational around diet. So if someone wants to work with me, they need to know that they'll be doing a lot of dietary.
And speaking of diet, we are very much about, the power of home cooked meals and getting people inspired to get back in their kitchen and eat real food without any of those things like vegetable oils that you've mentioned. I'd love to know, I know you've mentioned, a lot about this balanced plate of macronutrients and what would benefit skin health, but was there one meal that you've cooked in the past couple of weeks that was a bit of a winner that you can share with us and get us inspired about?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that my favorite and my family's favorite is probably the beef taco bowl that I make. So I love using beef liver powder in that as well to really supercharge it. I'm a big fan of Mexican food, but yeah, I love a beef taco bowl, and you can get your good fats in there as well with some Greek yogurt or coconut yogurt on the top and avocado on the top. It's got a bit of spice to it as well. But so many women with acne are deficient in iron and B12, and so to be having that organic beef in the beef taco bowl and to be having that beef liver in there as well, it's really nourishing for rectifying those deficiencies that we need in the skin.
Yeah, sounds delicious. I'll have to get the recipe off you and we'll put it on the site and on the show notes as well. So thank you for sharing that.
Love that beef powder idea as well to supercharge it. But we also just really wanted to thank you so much for your time, your wisdom. We can see you've helped so many people. And if listeners out there want to find out a bit more about what you've spoken about or get in touch, where's the best place?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of different ways. I've got a holistic multi-award-winning clinic in Orangery Country, Fitzroy, Melbourne. So you can come and see us if you're in Melbourne. Otherwise, I do have an online masterclass that has helped hundreds of people with acne called Eat to Beat Acne. And I know that you'll include our social handles and our website in the show notes as well.
Great. Thanks, Asha. It was great to speak to you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Liked this podcast? Please give us a 5-star review and share it with someone who you think would benefit from it. We want to help as many people as possible live healthier lives. This podcast is general in nature. We aren't doctors or health practitioners. But if this podcast has prompted something for you, we really encourage you to make an appointment with your health practitioner and get advice that is tailored to you. This podcast is recorded on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples.